Hello everyone, welcome to Kishore Chess Mentor. And in today's section, we shall learn about how to attack in chess. So, in order to attack in chess, there are certain criteria, and one of the major indicator is the king should be in the center. So, whenever our opponent king is in the center, so that is the main indicator for us to initiate the attack. And in this position, we can pretty much say that let's say both the kings are quite in the center, but as we see the piece positions, so white pieces are much active and aggressive compared to black pieces. So black pieces are passive and white pieces are active. So which leads to the initiative for white, and we shall see how white is initiating the attack. And as the king is in the center, so the king has to be exposed. Okay, so and white will find ways to expose it. And in these patterns, white will tend to sacrifice the bishop on e6, and once the pawn captures the bishop on e6, the queen will capture it and the king will be quite exposed. And so let us go to the game. So bishop e6 and say pawn into e6, queen into e6, and there are only two options for black here. So one is the queen e7 and the other one is the bishop e7. So the reason being the king is quite held up in the center and there is no other pieces for the aid of the king. So what happens is, let us see queen e7. So in this position, so we need to be aware that let's say the king is quite exposed to the center, as well as the queen is also there in the same file. So which leads us to think about say pinning the queen, okay, with the help of the rook. But I don't think it can be done with the tempo right now. So let us see what can be the options for white here. So one of the option can be queen b3. And for queen b3, the idea being the king is still held up in the center. The king cannot castle on the queen side, and it cannot go to f7 either, and not to d5 either. So the king is quite held up there. And what black can try to do is, okay, so black needs to put some pieces before the queen, or I would rather say on the e file. So when the rook to e1 comes, okay, so it has some shield for the queen and the king. So he will look for say bishop to g7. And the idea behind this is, let's say when the rook goes to e1, you have a shield right now, say bishop to e5. And certainly we cannot proceed with f4 because the rook will go to f8, and it is not only the black king in the center, it is also the white king in the center. And now we are pinning the queen, whereas black will pin our king, so as a counter attack. So here, let's say if we rush for playing rook e1, so what will happen is that rook bishop e5, and say here rook into e5, queen into e5, because the queen is the quite a overloaded piece here, right? So queen is defending that e5 as well as the b7, and say here rook into e5, queen into e5, queen into b7, and all of a sudden, okay, so black is having a very good move here. So till now, we are pretty clear that the king is held up in the center, and we are assuming that okay, so we will crush him down there. But all of a sudden, there is a move here like this, say castles, and now the king is quite safe. Okay, and all of a sudden the tables are reversed, and it looks like black is winning right now. And when you see here rook g1, it doesn't work because the king will go to h8, and there are no more checks. And we cannot say that queen g7 can be a checkmate here because the queen is already guarding it. So slowly, he will, he will initiate the attack against our king. So our king is quite vulnerable. The white king on f1. So here, so this is the move that is saving the position. So what happens is, instead of rook e1 here, okay, so he plays rook g1. The idea behind this is now in the variation of what we see, the rook e1 and then say bishop e5, rook into e5, queen into e5, queen into b7, and now castles cannot happen because the rook is there on g1, and the moment it got castled, it falls on g8, so which is going to be a check. So that is not going to happen here. So this is point one. And say rook f8. Okay, so here rook to g4 and with an attack. Okay, so and let's say here queen e7. That can be one more move which can be the best possible move here. That is queen to f5. So this is a good move here. Okay, so bishop to c8. The idea behind this is, let's say you want to pin, you can pin, but your queen is under attack in the first place. So queen to f3, and the queen goes to f3. it also has a threat of queen to c6 as well. Okay, so and also rook to e1. So what happens here is, let's say if we place rook a7, okay, so we can play knight e4. So the idea behind this is, let's say if he plays, I mean the idea is knight to d6, and then if king goes to d8, probably knight to f5, and it comes with a check, and then knight into queen. So now let's say here instead of rook a7, if the queen goes to c7, what will happen is that white will bring all his pieces towards the king. So rook e1 check, bishop e7, rook g1. So the idea behind this is rook f8, queen h5. So he will march this rook to g7, and on the 7th rank, like he will try to bring his queen as well, and there's a pin here, and the king is stuck in the center. So that is the idea behind it. Rook to g7 and rook to e8. So here there's a brilliant move here. Okay, so after rook to e8, knight to d5. The idea behind this, there is quite an unsupported piece on rook a8, right? So which is yet to be developed, and it's quite unsupported as well. And that leads to knight e5 and knight d5, and say attacking the queen. And if queen goes to a5, okay, we can pretty much say queen into e8. There's a tactical blow here. Queen into e8 and king into e8 can lead rook into king here, followed by whatever, which rook, okay, so knight here and checkmate. So it can be the other way around as well. So having said that, there is, instead of queen e8, straight away there is knight e7 as well. So this is one another move. Okay, so having seen this, we will go to the other option. So another variation that which black can play here is bishop e7. Okay, so straight away, if we see that, let's say in order to attack this one, okay, bishop into e6, the pawn has to take it, otherwise the king is exposed, and I mean like we have won a pawn, and there are no intermediate moves for black either. So pawn into queen into, and now bishop e7. So as I said here, there are only two options. One is bishop e7 and queen e7. And let us see like what happens if black plays bishop e7. So if you place bishop e7, knight to e4. So the idea behind this is, let's say the knight is coming into the attack, and the bishop is pinned on e7 as well. So we can jump to say knight f6 and bishop to c8. So knight f6 here, and certainly not say knight to d6 here. The reason being, like let's say he can take queen into d6, and if you take rook into d6, he can take bishop into queen as well. Okay, so knight to f6, and now I mean the queen cannot capture the knight, and the king is under attack. So rook d7. So this is a brilliant move here. I mean like he is eliminating the defender of the bishop, say, which is quite a major defender, the light square bishop. So he is sacrificing his rook for it, and meanwhile like he is bringing his pieces. So the beauty here is that we are all stuck here, and let us see like what happens. Knight f6 check, king here. So we have come to a lockdown. I mean like, so how are you going to proceed with just the two pieces, right? So I mean like we have everywhere it is supported. So queen to d7 check won't work because of queen on c7, and the king is quite held up here on say d8, and the king doesn't have any square to go. Okay, so after d8, if you ask the, I mean like there are no squares for the king. So it cannot go to e8 because of the knight on f6, and it cannot go to c8 because of the queen on e6. So what happens? So what can we play here? So certainly like we have got into a position, I mean like wherein like we can say king e2. So we need to add some pieces to it, right? So we need to add some pieces into the attack, and it is not sufficient with just the queen and the knight. So the king goes to e2, and then say queen to d6, rook to d1, and queen into king into bishop into queen into king here. So I mean like here white is having some compensation as well, so he is having some extra 2 pawns, and after a few moves he won. So in a nutshell, whenever like we attack, okay, so there are certain indicators. So one of the major indicators that what we see today is that it's the king being in the center, and this game illustrates that even though the king doesn't look like having any any major issues, but I mean like white has exposed himself with the tactical blow of bishop into e6. So thanks for watching, and I will come back with some other videos tomorrow. If you like the video, you can like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much.